Hello, gorgeous pagan people. My name is Eric, and this week I am substituting for Kara here on the Pagan Perspective. Our question this week is coming from Minty Dandy Danny, who we've answered questions from before. I definitely recognize that name. And they've left us a rather lengthy comment, so I will put it in the description below if you want to read along. But I do want to read it out because I think there's some important context about some of the things I want to talk about here. So what they say is, during my very first successful past life regression meditation, I learned about a past life where I was a witch who painted intent into my paintings. I also painted curses into them, so my worry is that some of my paintings are still out there hurting people. Not good, right? So my first question, have you heard of a curse painting of two Victorian women walking hand in hand across a white bridge in a springtime park? My second question, have you personally, or have you heard of anyone who has experienced scary past lives? How did you resolve that? Also, I have already done the Google search and came up empty-handed. That's why I'm asking. If you need to know more about this past life, I've done some tarot readings for myself as well. But any other resources you can provide or recommend would be great. So, there's a couple of things here that I think is really interesting. I think this brings up a question that you haven't explicitly put in the post here, but I think it brings up a really interesting question of, like, when you die, does your magic stop affecting the world, or does it still go on even if you don't? Because, like, I was thinking about, like, golems in relation to this, right? And, like, if you can't kill the golem, kill the magician that made it, and that'll kill the golem. It's like that last kill switch. And I sort of thought about whether or not that kind of principle would relate to something like this, whether that intent would be there without you, in that incarnation, still being there to fuel it or to give it power. So they may still be out there, but they may be powerless potentially now, depending on how you think about those metaphysics. Have I heard of the painting? No, I definitely haven't. When I was actually reading through this to substitute today, I was sort of racking my brain trying to think of any kind of curse paintings, or anything like that historically, but, like, I can't really think of anything, to be honest. Outside of that, like, one episode of Charmed where they get locked in the painting, yeah, that was the only thing that came to my mind. I mean, that and Austin Osman Spare work. Austin Osman Spare's work. He was, of course, very involved in, like, art magic and sigil creation and things like that. So I think there's definitely some precedence here, and, like, I would even think of, like, more new agey type techniques, like your crystal grids and your vision boards, to fall, like, under that, like, art magic kind of category as well. So I have no doubt that this is, like, a thing. But it's not something I've ever encountered myself. But if anybody had a cursed painting, I would be very interested in inspecting it. I think that would be very interesting. In terms of trying to locate it or trying to find it, you could definitely employ further psychic faculties. You said that you're doing readings on this as well, which is good. That'll help you to get some more information about it. But I would also be thinking about maybe using a pendulum to douse the location of the artworks and trying maybe to hunt them down on foot. If you can get from the memories or from further investigation into this. So I used the Inner Alchemy CD for past life regression when I did my first regression. But I found that after doing it that first time, I'm able to do it on my own now. I'm normally very cautious about recommending things like that, recordings and stuff, because, like, they are hypno-suggestive, and there are things, like, programmed into the sounds, and you don't know exactly who's made them or with what intent. So I'm very, like, skeptical of binaural beats on YouTube and things, because I just, like, I don't know what's actually in them, you know? But I used the Inner Alchemy CD. That's, you know, my personal experience was quite positive, but I'm not gonna try to endorse something that I don't know too much about. But techniques like that might be useful, or even going to see somebody who specializes in regressing people. might be helpful to get more information. This is where I was going with this. Get some more information about where and when this was happening. Like, you mentioned it was a Victorian, like the figures in the painting were Victorian. Was this painted during that time period? Might be something interesting to investigate, to try to figure out like where and when this might have come into being and what might have happened to it after that. Yeah, and you're asking about scary past lives. Sort of. I don't have scary past lives personally. Well, I guess like my past life definitely had trauma and things in it. But I've done regressions for people where I would go back and convey to them what their past life was, which was something I seem to be pretty good at. And like, it's kind of like, I don't know, collective storytelling, I guess, in a way, where you both, like, as I was saying it, they were already imagining what I was about to say next, and you build that like psychic link, and you're watching this life play out together. It's not just like me prescribing to you what your past life was. It's much more interactive. It's very hard to explain how I approach it, but it's all visualization and mediumship techniques and stuff. Mediumship-esque techniques, obviously. But I think one of the scariest ones that I saw, I regressed somebody and I took them back to a life where they were a bird, and seeing that experience from their perspective, because they were actually like targeted by a larger bird of prey, and like in this life now, I didn't know this before the regression, but in this life now they have a terrible fear of birds. And when I told them at first that I was seeing the life of an animal and that this animal was a bird, she burst into tears, and like had like it was a very horrific life, but it was something that was so like to us I think is sort of trivial maybe, but when I was watching it from her perspective and like getting that energetic response from her, like it was really a scary thing, and it's something that she kept with her through her other incarnations. So I think, yeah, there's that I've definitely seen scary past lives. In terms of how you resolve that, I think that like it's like anything, like once you've named the demon, you can sort of conquer it. And that's sort of how I deal with like other mental health issues that I experience, right? It's like once I learn what the issue is, I can build those toolkits to help me with that thing. So I think that that's definitely going to be a case by case personal thing about how you resolve that kind of thing. I think like if you're sort of like feeling guilty, I guess, for the actions that you took in that past life, I think that sometimes we can become a little bit too, like, we can put too much emphasis on our past lives. And this isn't something I talk about very often, but like my past life memories are off-world experiences. Like I identify as other kin. And so, like, but for me, it's very much about, like, living this life now, living my human life, and living in these experiences. This is what I'm being called to do now. I don't think it's helpful to me to cling too much to those past life experiences that are so intangible. And, you know, even though, like, those memories are just as vivid as any others from this life, and I can recall them just as easy as I do the memories of this life, I think it's important for me to stay grounded in this reality and in this consensus world, just, you know, in spite of those other memories and whatever purposes I think they might come along with. So I think that, like, that's something that's really personal, and, like, I don't necessarily think you should, like, be clinging to any sort of guilt over, like, these cursed paintings that might be out in the world. I guess as well you could do like further divination and further like psychic investigation into this. But yeah, I think that's maybe all that I want to say. So I hope that that's helpful for you. I hope that's given you something to chew on or to think about. And I guess I'd be really interested to hear from the rest of our viewers what your experiences with past lives are, how much stock you place in them. Do you even believe in past lives? Obviously, you can tell by this video that I definitely do believe in past lives. I'm not sure how it all works. I try to just focus on this life and what I'm doing here, because that's plenty already. So I will love and leave you, and until I speak to you next time, I hope that you're well. Mwah. Bye.